All right, so welcome to the July Reiju. And this it's quite interesting actually. When I was putting up the topic, I was noticing my own discomfort with the wording "please yourself," because I have to say I am a people pleaser, and I have been all my life, and I'm trying to kick the habit and reform myself. So I was kind of like, oh, this is a great topic, but actually, I think it's a theme. And in the chit chat before, I think a few of you are right on theme. And this idea of coming into what it is that our own heart's desire, not so much the heart's desire of everybody around us. And often we find ourselves in these predicaments, right? Where we have we have a job, we have family duties, maybe we're parents or we look after parents, and there's all of these duties that we have to do. And then we end up kind of losing ourselves. And if you're a people pleaser, it's even worse, because then what happens is you almost feel like you don't have a right to live a life that you design. It's you fall into these relationships and you fall into these patterns of behavior whereby your feeling is your worthiness is somehow connected to how much you do for others. And I know for me, this has been an infliction of mine for a long time. And so this theme that I feel is really coming in strongly this year. So we were chatting beforehand about, oh, it's all like in March time, there was all this bubbling and there's all these themes that are starting to come through. But I would say extend it even longer to the whole lockdown period as well, because there was a real opportunity when we went into all these various lockdowns, and basically the isolation that occurred allowed us to release a lot of these duties, because we just couldn't go and see people, and we couldn't go and do all these things for them, and we couldn't get so involved. So we had a lot more time to ourselves to really identify. I know a lot of people that said to me, oh, it was such a relief, because I could just, be at home with myself, with what I wanted to do, and not run around doing everything for everybody else. Now, if you were in that category, then trust me, you are in the people-pleasing category. If you are one of these people that found, oh my God, I went into lockdown and I had to do everything on my own, and I don't know how I could cope all on my own, you're probably in the other category. So often just observing how your experience of lockdown will give you some clues and some hints as to what your propensity is, whether it's to rely on other people too much, perhaps, or whether it's to give too much. Now, as we are very definitely coming out now, I think for some of us, the tension is around, how do I take what I learned about myself in this period of isolation, or this period of freedom, in a sense, of all of these duties and things that I kind of felt I had to do, or I had to be more present with people, or maybe I had to go out more than I wanted to. How do we take all these lessons and mold the life that we want to live freely? And this can be a real challenge, because as soon as everything starts to open up, then immediately what happens is we start to get pulled in all these different directions again, right? As we try and go back to normal, whatever that is, and other people's desires and wishes and wants start to come back in to pull us into all these different directions. And you might be finding that with work, you might be finding that with your relationships, your family, suddenly having to start traveling again to go and see people that you didn't have to really go and see for the last couple of years, and starting to think about, well, is that a duty? Is that something that I feel I have to do? Or is that something I actually want to do? And these can be very, very challenging questions, particularly, let's say, if it's family members and you feel a great deal of stress or tension at, oh, now I have to go visiting again. Now I have to do this again, that again. And these questions, so do you have the courage, or do you feel like you have the permission within yourself to craft and design the life that you actually want to be living? And this is, it's going to sound very over dramatic, but this is kind of like the hero's journey that we're on now. Is when we think about it logically, we are born into this life to live our life. That's logical. Like we are born, our spirit has come into this life to enjoy our life. We haven't been born to be a slave to someone else's life, right? We haven't been born to live our parents' life. Very logical. Yet the way that we move in the world does not align with that for most of us. There's very, very few people I know that are living life 100% on their terms. And this is really the revolution we're going through at the moment. So the revolution is an internal revolution for us to start pleasing ourselves. So this theme that I've chosen for this Reiju or this month is really important. And I think for many of us, this struggle that we've been feeling since March, as things really start to open up, right, is the tension around this. So it's the tension of what have I discovered about myself over the last couple of years? And now, as all the so-called duties or pressures of life start to come back in, how am I responding to that? And do I have the courage to actually go, actually, this is my life, and that's a no. And I'm not going to get together with that family gathering, and I'm not going to do this, and I'm not going to do that because I don't want to. And I don't have to explain it, and I don't have to validate myself, and I don't have to justify myself, don't have to make any excuses. It's simply a no. Now, I know for some of you, you might be like, yeah, I can do that. But for most of us, particularly if you're attracted to Reiki and, the healing and helping and all this kind of thing, when I say that, your mind's probably doing a like, I can't do that. I couldn't say that. I couldn't be like that. Now, I'm telling you, if that is part of your makeup on challenge, you might find you start to cycle through these, like some of you were kind of expressing, well, there was all this build up for something and then it kind of went backwards. So start to look at what you're cycling through and start to look at some of the pressures and play with the idea. Okay, I'm not going to say do it, but just play with the idea that you're allowed to go, I don't want to do that. And I've noticed just little things that before I would have just done without thinking. I would have felt a little pressure. I don't really want to do this, but I'm going to do it. Whereas now it's like, I don't want to do it and I'm not going to do it. There's a whole different level of pressure in my system. And I would also invite you to experiment with, and I'm not going to do it, and actually not do it, and then see what happens. Now, the shocking thing is that other people's disapproval doesn't kill you. I've actually been playing with that. It really doesn't. People might write you a shitty email. They might give you their look, really disappointed in you. And weirdly enough, you don't explode. It's brilliant. You're just kind of like, oh, well, shame, move on. And so once you start to experiment with this and you start to see that disapproval does not mean dissolution. Disapproval does not mean, that your whole life collapses around you just because one or two people disapprove of you. It's so liberating, because then you start kind of think, oh, actually I could become disapproved of by several people. And all I do is I feel freer. Okay.
So Elaine, this is Priya. So what about the people that are not people pleasers?
Oh, you're so lucky. Oh my God. You know what? Like, if you're not a people pleaser, I'm so jealous. And this is your best life. You can now just live your best life without any tension.
No, so going to like, what the topic we started with, where, we talked about energy cycling. Like I felt kind of more like a wave where I'm going through ups and downs. And how is that coming into, like, that's also, I guess, the same kind of thing though?
So say more about that. What's the feeling of the up and down?
I guess just like, being happy and then all of a sudden feeling really down. So more from an emotional perspective, more from what I'm going to be able to go and get. Right. Like, all of a sudden I'm like, oh, I'm a go-getter. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this. And then it just like really goes down.
Okay.
And yeah, so, but I've noticed that that's also been in wave. It hasn't been the full cycle, like Elaine said, but it's more like waves.
So, okay. So here's something, it's actually related, and I'm just going to put it out there for you to play with. But this idea of, oh, I'm going to go and do something, I'm going to go and be something, I'm going to go and, that kind of energy of bigness. Mm-hmm. I would drop in a question: for whom or for what in my own mind am I doing this for? Mm-hmm. Because I've had a similar thing in terms of I've been grappling with this idea of, oh, I need to be a certain person, like I need to be successful. And I've had a really interesting comeback internally, which is whose definition of success am I running? What program of success looks like this am I running? And that is also part of the whole people pleasing schmaltz. It's not, you're not people pleasing a certain person, but it's like now you're trying to please society or your culture or whatever it is. But really, I would really invite you to look at that, because if you are really running in an authentic path at the moment, and some of you will be in this, like we're all in a range of spectrums at the moment of really having landed into this new energy. And some of us have landed and now you've landed if the ups and downs are like waves. When you go to the beach and there's some quite big waves, there's definitely big waves at the moment, right? So there's big waves, but you're just on a lilo on top of it. So it's like, ooh, and it's soothing. It's up and down and up and down. You're not getting caught. So if that's just happening, it's not bothering you. It's like one day you're up, one day you're down, and then it's almost like you wake up in the morning, like, oh, what kind of mood is the environment in? It's almost not even personal. It's like, oh, there's a bit of anxiety in the air, but it's not like I'm anxious. It's like, oh, there's a bit of anxiety today. So it's I'm not saying it doesn't affect you, but it doesn't bother you. Like you're not gripped by it, because then the next day it's going to be a different thing. And I think if you're in that kind of up and down, that like there's no problem, right? It's just kind of like one day up, one day down, but it's not, there's no feeling of personal up and downy. But if you feel that it's kind of gripping you, that I shouldn't be like this, or I should be pushing, or anything like this, where there is a feeling of disharmony in the system that is disturbing, then I would invite you to look a little bit more deeply as to where is that questioning coming from? Because I've definitely been having a lot of talks with people on a very similar theme, actually, which is like, actually, I've decided I don't have to do all this big stuff, or I've decided I want to slow down. That seems to be a real theme, that people are thinking, I don't have to be the big shot. I don't want to be the big shot. And that's another similar theme of not feeling you have to run around and please everybody. It's the same thing, right? Not feeling I have to run around and say to everyone, look how successful I am, look how good I am, look how great I am. It's just kind of like you're just sitting at home knitting or going for a walk in nature. And that is equally fulfilling, if not more fulfilling, than being able to say, look at my list of accomplishments and how many certificates I've got and blah, blah, blah. And I think that is going to be very interesting. Can you imagine what the world will look like when people just stop buying into all this, right? And they just do what they want. And if some guy says, oh, you need this, and oh, you need this facelift, and you need, oh, this get young soon and you need all this weightlifting and you need, and if all of that stops working, it's just a whole different world. There's no, all that pressure, all that pressure that we feel every time we look at the ads, every time we look at the marketing, every time we're being told what we have to be. If none of that starts impacting anybody, I mean, yeah, it's a whole different thing going on. And that, my feeling is, that is the very strong energy that we are feeling. And not everyone, like lots of people are going to buy into it for a long time, but there's going to be a bigger gap as we start to drop all of this societal pressure and we start to look individually at what it is that will fulfill us as people. That's the movement. So whatever that movement is, I know I've focused on the people-pleasing aspect because that's what I've been personally looking at, but whether it's the people-pleasing aspect or the society-pleasing aspect or the cultural pleasing, whatever it is, any tension in your body is going to be some kind of pleasing movement. And it might even be pleasing your own ego. Don't discount that as also another people-pleasing. You're pleasing your ego personality. So does that kind of, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it makes a lot of sense to look at it from that perspective. Thank you.
I'm just having a quick stroll through the chat. And I think you're right. Christine said, I think the millennials are already like that. to a point, until you look at Instagram, then I'm like, really? I'm not really sure that the millennials think they are as free of this image as they think they are, frankly. I think there's a lot of, there's still a lot of image projection going on out there. And I think that social media is terrible for that. Really terrible. Because let's face it, you're not taking photos of yourself when you first get out of bed in the morning, are you? I'm not, that's for sure. So, scare myself, let alone everybody else. Okay, now we've chit-chatted long enough. I'm going to drop us into the meditation now. So the way the meditation works is it's simply guidance. So follow my guidance as you please. Again, this is the theme, right? Just follow along however you feel drawn to the words, or you could just simply drop into the energy that is being transmuted and drop into that, have me on mute and be playing something in the background. That's also perfectly fine. And we do it for about 20 minutes and then I'll pop back up. I do turn off my video because I prefer to do it like that. So we're just going to get ourselves settled. So when I ask you to bring hands in Garsho, it's simply prayer pose and you just rest it around your heart center. And we're just going to start with closing our eyes, bringing hands into Garsho. And we start to focus on the breath, the inhale and exhale. Not trying to change the breath in any way, simply observing it. Might be quick, might be shallow, might be deep in the belly. There is no right way to breathe. Simply breathing happening. And this is the first part of our training, really, is to really drop into what is. Not worrying about whether your breathing is correct, whether it's yogic or spiritual enough. Simply breathing. And then you're just going to bring your focus into your hands. Notice the way that they touch the fingertips, the pressure. If you've got your thumbs into the sternum, noticing the pressure around the heart center. And then as you inhale, You're focusing around the hands and inviting the Reiki attunement, the Reiju, the blessing, into the hands on the inhale and all through the body on the exhale. Bringing the Reiki into the hands as you inhale, and as you exhale, dispersing that beautiful energy all the way around the body. Just allowing it to open you up, requesting it. Noticing the quality, the gentleness. And now, with hands still in Gasho, starting to tune into everybody else that is listening today, that is joining us today. And extending that Reiki out to them simply through intention, your intention to support everybody here with the Reiki energy, not your own personal energy. That is yours. Just inviting the Reiki to be shared. And now imagining we're on a timeline, everybody listening later. Noticing where you are on that timeline, perhaps right at the beginning, perhaps a few days away, a few weeks away. And in that timeline, we're all together instantly right now. And the energy just expands. Every person that listens, influences in the past, in the future, not making sense of that in your mind, but in your body, feeling the truth of that. Expanding the energy. Projecting it out into the future, noticing even more energy comes back to you. And then whenever you're ready, bringing your hands down somewhere on the body, palms on the skin so that the Reiki is flowing through into your body. Take a minute to observe the hands. You might notice sensations, maybe some tingling or heat. And then bringing your attention to under the hands, where it meets your body. And feeling into the sensations there. Maybe heat or cool, tingles, pulsing. And if there are no physical sensations, being okay with that. Perhaps you notice the mind is a bit calmer. You might notice a certain stillness or silence, even a ringing in the ears. or a gentle buzzing through the whole body. Bringing your attention back to the breath. Perhaps it has changed. Noticing the mind. Possibly still thoughts coming and going, but looser, less sticky. Like your whole energy is just rocking and bobbing. Almost like you're above the waves, just rising and falling very gently with the waves. Totally relaxed. And if there's any areas of tension around the body, just opening it, as if you're inviting Reiki to come in from the air itself into all the cells, making your body transparent, open. Imagining a oneness with yourself and the air around you. And if your thinking is going this way or that way, just letting it be. Noticing that you can observe the thinking, no matter how tight. Notice your choice. You can add to it, or you can simply let it be. Almost like in the background. As you rest your attention either on the breath, on the hands, noticing this feeling of peace, very gentle energy that is all pervading. This is your birthright right here. The gentle ease of life. Inhale, exhale. No tightness required. Notice when the tight thoughts come in, if they do. Just breathing and relaxing, allowing them to pass back out again. You can always pick them up later. But right now we focus on the Reiki healing. And you can simply use the breath, inviting the Reiki through the hands, into the body. But you can also experiment with inhaling the Reiki through the air itself, into all the cells, into the skin, into the lungs through the breath. And you can play with the exhale, releasing all that no longer serves you. Releasing any tightness. You could even go deeper and release any areas that you feel are bound by a sense of duty. You can invite a sense of courage or permission to live your life freely on your terms. But also notice any tightness that might start to form around this. Really noticing when you start to tighten around even concepts of freedom. Freedom is simply acting from alignment, from flow. And practicing that flow right here, right now. Just by allowing yourself to be present, resting in the stillness. Not worrying about what you'll do next. Just enjoying your breath, enjoying this time. Breathing in the Reiki, inviting it to harmonize your entire system, physical, emotional, mental, spiritual, all the many layers. Coming into that deep sense of self, your awareness, the depth of peace in your body, the stillness all through the cells. Underlying everything. And bringing this sense of peace out with you as we start to deepen the breath, feel into the edges of our body again. Bringing hands back into Gassho, prayer pose. Reclaiming all of your energies back into the aura, into your own personal boundaries. Giving yourself a little wiggle, squeezing your fingers, your toes, stretching your arms above your head, giving yourself a little shake and shimmy all the way down the spine. And whenever you're ready, opening your eyes,